Good morning. It's a special day today. We are going to honor our graduates later on today, and I look out and I see some of you and think about the years that we've been here and how small you were and how big you are now. It's pretty amazing, and we're just glad that we can celebrate that. We are looking at the book of Hebrews, and we are going to be in Hebrews chapter 7, and we're going to talk about a guy by the name of Melchizedek a little bit, but really what we're going to talk about is Jesus. As we take a look at this particular thing, I am in perfect understanding that a better priest, that right there to the hearers of this particular letter in this particular time, it was written to a Jewish population of Christians. And they would have taken a look at this and they said, yeah, okay, a priest is something that is absolutely necessary. That is something that we have had all the time. We expect to have a priest. There needs to be a priest. It's part of who we are. It's part of what we do. But I'm also mindful that as we take a look at the world today, perhaps people don't necessarily see the importance of a priest. There are people who are in the world and they have no sense of why in the world we would ever need somebody to be a priest on our behalf. Why in the world would we need something like that? There are Christian groups that do have priests, but even so, beyond that, there are just a lot of people today who just don't see the need. What's the point? As we take a look at what we are going through right now, what we need is, we truly do need a perfect priest, and I hope to make that case today, and maybe give you something that you can use for those who may not think that they need anyone at all. What we have here is, when we are talking about this perfect priest, we are talking about the priest that we absolutely, positively need. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read through chapter 7. I know it's long, but I just want us to go through what is going on here. I'm going to read it pretty quickly. But it says in chapter 7, this Melchizedek was king of Salem and priest of God Most High. He met Abraham returning from the defeat of the kings and blessed him, and Abraham gave him a tenth of everything. First, his name means king of righteousness. Then also king of Salem means king of peace. Without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life, like the Son of God, he remains a priest forever. Just think how great he was. Even the patriarch Abraham gave him a tenth of the plunder. Now the law requires the descendants of Levi who become priests to collect a tenth from the people, that is, their brothers, even though their brothers are descended from Abraham. This man, however, did not trace his descent from Levi, yet he collected a tenth from Abraham and blessed him who had the promises. And without doubt, the lesser person is blessed by the greater. In the one case, the tenth collected by men who died, but in the other case, by him who was declared to be living. One might even say that Levi, who collects the tenth, paid the tenth through Abraham. Because when Melchizedek met Abraham, Levi was still in the body of his ancestor. If perfection could have been attained through the Levitical priesthood, for on the basis of the law was given to the people, why was there still need for another priest to come, one in the order of Melchizedek, not in the order of Aaron? For when there is a change of the priesthood, there must also be a change of the law. He of whom these things are said belonged to a different tribe, and no one from that tribe has ever served at the altar, for it is clear that our Lord descended from Judah, and in regard to that tribe, Moses said nothing about priests. And what we have said is even more clear if another priest like Melchizedek appears, one who has become a priest not only on the basis of regulation, as to his ancestry, but on the basis of the power of an indestructible life. For it is declared, you are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. The former regulation is set aside because it was weak and useless, for the law made nothing perfect, and a better hope was introduced, by which we draw near to God. And it was not without an oath. Others became priests without any oath, but he became a priest with an oath, when God said to him, the Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever. Because of this oath, Jesus has become the guarantee of a better covenant. Now there were many of those priests since death prevented them from continuing in office, but because Jesus lives forever, he has a permanent priesthood. Therefore, he is able to save completely those who come to God through him, because he always lives and intercedes for them. Such a high priest meets our need, one who is holy, blameless, pure, set apart from sinners, exalted above the heavens. Unlike the other priests, he does not need to offer sacrifices day after day, first for his own sins and then for the sins of the people. He sacrificed for their sins once for all when he offered himself. For the law appoints a high priest men who are weak, but the oath which came after the law appointed the Son who has been made perfect forever. As we take a look at this, we see that Jesus really is the priest we need, and we take a look at all these passages, and And we're thinking, okay, Aaron and Melchizedek and Levi's, all the Levite priests and all this kind of stuff, and it kind of boggles our mind if we're not steeped in that Jewish thought, but these hearers would have understood this. But there is something that I think that everybody understands, that everybody should understand, that even people who are not in Christ should understand. We have a problem today in the areas of righteousness and peace. And we've talked about that righteousness. We talked about this just a couple of weeks ago again. When we're seeing that word righteousness, it also means justice. Justice and righteousness mean the same exact thing in the people's thinking at this time. And so when we're talking about this, we can see in our world that there is a righteousness problem, that there is a justice problem. There is something that is just not right. And as we take a look at the news and we see what is going on, and we see the oppression, and we see things that are just going sideways in so many ways, we can see that there is injustice in the world. And things just aren't right. And we can talk about the myriad of things, and I thought about enumerating them, but, we just get depressed. Because it really is something that is bad. And when we think about peace, we can think about the violence that is taking place in our world, in wars and gun violence and all sorts of other ways. And we can take a look at that and we can say, you know what, there is no peace. And anybody that's any kind of rational at all would have to admit that. I was talking with someone recently who is not a member of the church, not a believer in any way, shape, or form. And she said, you know what, this world is tough. And I'm not sure if it came to having kids that I'd do it again. Because I'm not sure how in the world their kids are going to make it. I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand. We recognize this as a society. We recognize this as a people. We recognize this deep inside of ourselves. And really, that's a hook for people to understand that we do need something. That we do need someone to save us. Maybe what we need in their minds is, in fact, a priest. We know that we absolutely must have a priest. We need a priest because no one is perfect. None of us is perfect. We sin and we do things that we know are wrong. If we take a look at what Paul says in Romans chapter 3, verses 9 through 18, he says this, what shall we conclude? Are we any better? Not at all. We're not better than anyone else. We have already made the charge that Jews and Gentiles alike are under sin. Sin is the problem. As it is written, there is no one righteous, not even one. There is no one who understands, no one who seeks God. All have turned away, they have together become worthless. There is no one who does good, not even one. Their throats are open graves, their tongues practice deceit. The poison of vipers is on their lips, their mouths are full of cursing and bitterness, their feet are swift to shed blood. Ruin and misery mark their ways, the way of peace they do not know. There is no fear of God before their eyes. And I take a look at this and I think, well, Paul, are you being a little bit hyperbolic? You say none of us are righteous, but then you go on and you talk about all these things, and I don't know that I'm all those things. And yet we hear what Jesus says in his Sermon on the Mount about loving our enemies and making sure that we keep ourselves pure and all these things that he talks about, and we can compare them to what is going on here, and we understand that really righteousness is far from us. Peace is far from us. Isaiah chapter 11 is a very interesting passage. It is one of those messianic passages. It's one of those ones that points toward Jesus Christ. And it says, a shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. From his roots, a branch will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and power, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord. And he will delight in the fear of the Lord. He will not judge by what he sees with his eyes or decide by what he hears with his ears, but with righteousness he will judge the needy. With justice he will give decisions for the poor of the earth. He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, with the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. Righteousness will be the belt, and faithfulness the sash around his waist. Now listen to this in verse 6. The wolf will live with the lamb. The leopard will lie down with the goats. The calf and the lion and the yearling together. And a little child will lead them. The cow will feed with the bear, their young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like the ox. The infant will play near the hole of the cobra, and the young child put his hand into the viper's nest. They will neither harm nor destroy on my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord, and the waters as the waters cover the sea. And I take a look at this. I've seen pictures where you have the lamb who is right next to the lion, and I thought about using an image like that. I didn't like any of the ones that I saw, but we understand what this is it's a picture of peace. This right here is the priest that we absolutely positively need. Let's take a look at Genesis real quick in chapter 14, because really what we have here is the one passage on this guy named Melchizedek. And Abraham is in a battle with people, and he defeats Chedorlaomer and the kings allied with him. The king of Sodom came out to meet him in the valley of Shavah, that is, the king's valley. But Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was a priest of God Most High. And he blessed Abram, saying, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who delivered your enemies into his hand. Then Abram gave him a tenth of everything. Guess what, guys? Besides a little bit of commentary in Psalm, this is all we have on Melchizedek. This is it. It's a little bit. I had my daughter read Hebrews chapter 7 while we were in the car the other day because we had a long trip. I just wanted to make sure that I had Hebrews chapter 7 in my head. And she said, what in the world is this all about? There's an entire chapter on this, but really what we're talking about when we're talking about Melchizedek is we are talking about a manifestation of a type. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. Thank you, Melissa. We're talking about a manifestation of a type, and what we have here is, and I was trying to figure out a metaphor of how in the world to work this, but if we think about how things are, sometimes certain things appear, and we look at them and we say, well, that's unusual, or that's just a small thing, but what we see is that there's a bigger thing going on around it, and I can't really think of a good metaphor to describe it. But imagine, for example, that you think about something like a mushroom or something, that it's just a small little thing, and you say, oh, well, that's a mushroom. But underneath, there's all these weavings and all this mycelium and all this kind of stuff, and some of them, the largest organism in the world is a mushroom. And we see that little bit of it. Well, Melchizedek is the little bit of a fruit of something that is much larger. He is a manifestation of a type. He is a manifestation of an eternal order. And as we see in chapter 7, verse 3, what we see here is, without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life, like the Son of God, he remains a priest forever. And we're thinking about this and we're thinking, wow, was Melchizedek some kind of angel? Was Melchizedek some kind of something or another? What's going on here? No, what the writer of Hebrews is saying is, the thing is, we don't know much about Melchizedek at all. We don't know what his origin was. We don't know where in the world he died. We don't know anything about that, but that's the point. God has plucked him out as an example of an eternal order. We see this also in verse 17 when he says this, you are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. We see this also in verse 21 when he says, but he became a priest with an oath when God said, the Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever. This is that psalm that says, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for my feet. This is a messianic psalm. This is talking about Jesus Christ. And so what we have here is, the Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever. This is an eternal order. There is no beginning. There is no end. But then, in a sense, what we see here, too, is that all owe tribute to this type of priest. We see Abram, when he defeated those kings and he came to Salem and he did all this, go back. Sometimes I get ahead of myself, don't I? So what's going on here is, Melchizedek comes to Abram and he's blessing him and he's doing all this. And Abram gives him a tenth of all he has. And then what the writer of Hebrews is doing is he's appealing to his Jewish audience and he wants to say, look, Abram is the father of all our people. Levi came from Abraham. And so what ended up happening is, because Abraham gave Melchizedek a tenth of everything, Levi is beholden to this order of priests. Levi gave the tithe through Abraham to Melchizedek. Levi is beholden to this type of priest, and everyone is beholden to that type of priest. And we see that the greater blesses the lesser. We see this, and we see Melchizedek has blessed the lesser. And this is what we see in Jesus, is that Jesus is blessing the lesser, and all owe him tributes. But then we see the incredible power of Jesus' priesthood. What we have here in this, when we're talking about verse 16, we are talking about one who has become a priest not on the basis of a regulation, not on the basis of Jesus, not on the basis of God giving a law and doing that type of thing. But what we see is we see an indestructible priesthood, the power of an indestructible life. We're talking about, when we're talking about Melchizedek, without beginning, without end, Jesus Christ was without beginning and without end. Melchizedek is just a manifestation of that God can use whomever he wants, that he can do this and he can make it outside the law, but Jesus is outside the law. He is an indestructible. We also see that it's established on God's oath, and what the writer says is, look, the Aaronic priesthood, the Levite priesthood, that was never based on an oath. God did not make an oath. He did not make a promise to establish this, but in Jesus Christ, he establishes Jesus' priesthood on the basis of an oath. And he's going back to that psalm, and he's saying this in verse 7, 20 through 22. It was not without an oath. Others became priests without any oath. But he became a priest with an oath when God said, the Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever. Verse 28 solidifies that thought, for the law appoints as high priests men who are weak, but the oath, which came after the law, appointed the Son who has been made perfect forever. And we see, because of that indestructibility, because of that eternity, what is going on is that Jesus can give continual intercession for the people. We see that in verses 23 through 25. Now there were many of those priests since death prevented them from continuing in office. Tons of priests. But because Jesus lives forever, he has a permanent priesthood. He is completely able to save. Because he always lives to intercede to them. Some of your favorite songs, I know one of the favorite songs of many people in this congregation is Because He Lives. Yes, he lives. And because of that, he can intercede. But then we also see that he is perfectly meeting our needs. And we take a look at this. We're going to take a look at verses 26. I know it says 24, but we're going to take a look at 26. He meets our needs. He is holy. He is blameless. He is pure. He is set apart from sinners, exalted above the heavens. And as we take a look at all this, we take a look at what he's doing. He's offering the priest offers sacrifices day by day. Jesus never had to do that. Why? Because of his perfection. Because of what he did. We see his perfect righteousness. He's doing everything correctly. Everything in righteousness. And he sacrificed for their sins once for all when he offered himself. And so what we have in Jesus Christ, a priest that is made perfect forever. And he perfectly meets the needs that we have. I oftentimes see on the highway out toward Lancaster County a billboard that says, no peace. No Jesus, no peace. Okay? N-O, Jesus, no peace. And then K-N-O-W, no Jesus, no peace. That's really what we're talking about here. We have a priest who perfectly meets our needs. If you have not come to Jesus Christ, then you don't have him as your priest. He is not interceding on your behalf yet, but he wants to. He can perfectly meet your needs. And if this is the day that you've decided that you want to become his child, by joining Jesus in his death, burial, and resurrection in the waters of baptism and coming out a new creature, we implore you to come as we stand and sing.